This is Springfield Ronin EMP. Is the recoil spring problematic? In today's video, we're going to take a look at a failure we recently encountered while shooting the Springfield Ronin EMP. This wasn't your typical type of failure where just a simple tap and rack gets you back in business. No. If this was encountered in a real-life desperation, concealed carry, need to use your firearm situation, the outcome could have been less than ideal. We're going to break down that failure today, examine what caused that failure, what we did to fix the problem, and our final thoughts on that. Before we get too much further into it, let's first hit the range and see that failure in action. Let's get in a little practice with the Springfield EMP 9mm. First magazine will be at the 12-inch gong. Here we go. Hey, it doesn't like this ammo or something. Something is off. Maybe the recoil, something's off with maybe the recoil, with the recoil spring. Oh, okay. After seeing that failure, you might be wondering, what type of failure would cause a failure to go into battery where you can push the firearm closed, fire the firearm, it'll cycle the next round, but again, not go into battery, and also prevent you from racking the slide and locking the action open? Bad ammo, bad magazine. Actually, in this case, the issue had to do with the recoil spring. Most of this problem was probably user created, though I'm not prepared to lay blame on the user for one simple reason, and that is, in the manual, Springfield for reassembly of the pistol just says, do everything in the reverse order. It's about 2 sentences, and in my opinion, one more page of detail could have probably prevented this from happening. So what was the issue? Well, the issue was with the recoil spring. As you can see here, the Springfield Ronin EMP used a dual spring recoil spring. It has that fat spring with a little thinner spring that rides in the middle on the guide rod. What ended up happening was the last time I cleaned this pistol, that fat spring on the outside of the recoil spring assembly mechanism, I got that backwards when I put it back in. And what that allowed the spring to do was when I fired the firearm, that spring got itself out of position, as shown in this recreation photo. So while the firearm would cycle one round, it would not fully go back into battery because the spring was not pushing it back into battery. And also with how that spring dislodged itself and worked itself down the recoil spring into a bad spot, you could not fully articulate the slide on the pistol. You could not lock it open. It was very challenging to get the loaded round out of the chamber, though luckily I was able to disassemble the firearm and figure out what was going on. It did take me quite a few minutes at the range to get the firearm both taken apart, get the recoil spring fixed, get it back in action. Now, like I said, one other page in the manual I think would have prevented this from happening, and I think all that needs to be said in the manual is they need to go over reassembly and detail the correct orientation of that spring and how it should sit on the recoil spring assembly. Getting it the wrong way, as we saw in today's video, could have catastrophic consequences. Another note that I feel like mentioning here is on this recoil spring assembly, the center guide rod is not fixed permanently to the back plate on that recoil spring assembly. So while I am fiddling with the recoil spring, trying to unscrew that larger spring and get it back into place. That whole thing came apart on me because that is just threaded into the back plate with a few threads on that guide rod. Now, I think I might do a little bit of thread locker or something like some Loctite on there to keep that in place. Because one other thing I've noticed when shooting this Springfield EMP is over time, as you shoot magazines through it, that recoil spring assembly slowly is unthreading itself. Where had I not paid attention and threaded that bit back in a couple times recently, there probably would have come a time where had the spring not worked itself over the lip and got itself out of place, that another failure would have happened where the spring would have probably just came apart altogether. Now, I don't know if I would have lost bits, though my gut tells me that if that would have happened in a real life situation, I would have probably lost some necessary bits to get the firearm back in action. All right, I got this fixed. Let's find out. Here we go. Okay. So anyway, do I think the recoil spring on the EMP is potentially problematic? Well, yes. Is some of that user issue? Yes. If you don't pay attention to when you're putting it back together, or you just don't notice that you got the spring backwards, you could end up in a world of hurt. And again, I do think one extra page in the manual could have probably prevented that from happening. Well, anyway, that seems like the perfect spot to end today's video. If you enjoyed the presentation, like the video, share it with your friends and family. And if you have any thoughts on this type of failure or you've experienced it yourself, drop a comment on there and let the rest of us know. Fred and I really appreciate you getting this far. Thanks for watching, and as always, have a good day. If you haven't been to our website in a while, check out TheBaconNation.com. In addition to posting links to recent videos, there's a section on our website for all of the 380s that we featured on the channel so far. Each of these sections has a breakdown with information on the firearm. Some of them have ammo test breakdown, like say for this ADX Cheetah. There's some comparison images, so if you're interested in things like how does the ADX Cheetah compare to the Bodyguard 2.0, you can easily see that. Some of them have our bacon rakings built in, as well as links to videos on those firearms. There's a section for the non-380 firearms that we're featuring, like for example, say the CZ P09C Nocturne, where you get much of the information on the P09C Nocturne and graphics that we've used in previous videos. There's also a section for the ammo test that we've done so far. So for example, the Aguila mini shell video that we've done recently, if you'd like to see information on that ammo, that's available on our website. There's also a section for some gear reviews that we've done, as well as how we've ranked the 380s so far, including what we feel is the best 380. And if you're into our wildlife photography, some of the wildlife pictures that we've used are also on our website. So again, if you haven't been there in a while, go to TheBaconNation.com.